How's it going, everybody? So I want to make this video. I've been wanting to make it for a long time. My little nerd take movie review on Dune versus Dune, whether or not the new Dune is as good as the old Dune. What are the differences and stuff? Little nerd stuff here, but we're doing it, right? So let's have a look here. Um, so here we have the Dune 1984. It's the one that kind of got me interested in Dune. There we go. Um, it's certainly a flavorful edition. It takes a lot of liberties, creative liberties, from the movie or from the book. The movie takes a lot of creative liberties from the content in the book, but it's still fun, and it's what got someone like me even interested in reading the books. Right? It's just a good sci-fi movie. The new one has come out, and I guess they're because today we just remake stuff. Certainly much more visually appealing. A lot of cool special effects. So some really good things about the new one, and some things that are just not as good, we'll say. I don't know. So what I was going to do is sort of compare, give you an idea of how I thought about this movie, sort of by comparing the characters, right? Because there are some good things about the new Dune. And I'll give you my final analysis at the end. But as far as which one is better, who knows if you'll agree with me. One thing here is my first caveat when I saw the worms is like, how does that thing move through the sand with a mouth open like that? Like, I didn't like the new design on the worms. It looks kind of cool, but like my nerd mind is like, how does that, like, it seems like it would just get a mouthful of sand the entire time. Like, how does that functionally work? Anyways, let's go to the lead character. So this is the big thing I think that the new Dune did well. Timothy Chalamet did a really good job. And it's not that Kyle MacLachlan is a bad actor. It's that if you read the books, so Paul is supposed to be 15 years old, right? Not 30. So in this sense, like, they did a much better job. And this guy, I don't really know this kid, but he is a good actor. He did a really good job, I thought. I thought he actually portrayed the Paul Atreides of the book much better, sort of much more uncertain. Like, it's one of the big caveats you have with the old Dune is that Paul is a grown ass man with a lot more sense of confidence. Whereas in the books, he's very unsure of himself in the early part, right? Because he's 15 years old. So that's like one of the things. I think he did a really good job. And I would say that in this sense, the new Dune, the new Paul Atreides beats the old Paul Atreides. Next is Gurney Halleck. This is a tough one because, we all love Patrick Stewart, but I thought Josh Brolin did a really good job in a sort of presenting a more, I guess, he's a very stern, Gurney Halleck is a very stern character. So they did very similar jobs in that it's still kind of a gruff, militaristic guy. So, but you love Patrick Stewart, you love Josh Brolin. So here I kind of give them a tie. Like, I thought they both did a really good job, and they're both well portrayed in the story. Duke Leto Atreides, again, I like the old Duke Leto. I thought the Jurgen Prochnow, however you say that, did a really good job. But I actually thought Oscar Isaac did a really good job. It's a much, it's a very good portrayal of Duke Leto, and this is a character that in the books really isn't around for very long, right? He just appears in the first book, and it's his job to kind of die, but it does present, it kind of gives you a character of who Paul's father is and why Paul is the way he is, right? And they do, the book does a decent job of portraying him. And for what you have in the movies, I thought they both did a very good job. Maybe giving the nod to Oscar Isaac on this one. I thought he did a really good job. Now, Duncan Idaho. So in the books, he's kind of an important character. Again, not around for long. In the original movie, he's barely in the movie, even in the extended edition, right? He's just barely there. He's got just a handful of scenes, right? I think really just two or three scenes. And the one of them is just him dying. So here in the new movie, they really gave Duncan Idaho something to do, and he's a much more fleshed out character in the new movie. In this sense, and I really don't like Jason Momoa. I think he's kind of goofy dude, bro, kind of dude, but I thought he did a good job. I thought like this is probably my favorite Jason Momoa role, and he really did a good job of sort of portraying Duncan Idaho, and it's a much better character. So here, the new Dune definitely takes it, right? Thufir Hawat. Here's there, I really like the old Thufir Hawat because he's kind of goofy and got the giant eyebrows, and it's just kind of a somewhat silly character, but it's still kind of fun and sort of, the Thufir Hawat, if you know the story, he's been with the family for like three generations, right? And you certainly get that impression in the old Dune, right? In the new one, Thufir Hawat has much less of a role. And it's hard to like. I kind of still tilted. Well, the new Thufir had some really good things. Uh, Most particularly is the thing with the eyes, right? Because the mentats, if you the Dune universe sort of prohibits certain kinds of computers and machines, and what they do is that instead they sort of breed humans with incredible computing brain capabilities, right? And that's what the mentats are. And you see a little bit of that in one scene with the new Thufir Hawat, which is not in the old one, which is very, very cool. So I still kind of think like the problem with the new one is that Thufir Hawat is not really in this story in the movie as much. Like he doesn't have as many scenes where he can do anything, which kind of brings me the problem with the new movie. But I kind of still give it a tie just for that one little touch that they added with the eyes, right? So still pretty good, right? But from here, like this is where I start to get kind of annoyed. Stilgar, right? They kind of criticize the old movie Stilgar because all the Fremen are effectively like white dudes with beards, right? And where in the story it's very sort of Arabic. There's a distinct Arabic feel to the Fremen, right? But what's weird about this movie, and I don't know if it's just the current crusade to have diversity in how they interpret that, is that Javier Bardem, and this is the thing, um, he talks in his normal Spanish accent. Now, this is a guy who's a great actor and he can do all sorts of accents, but for whatever reason, they told him just stick with your own Spanish accent, right? And for English speakers, it doesn't really mean crap to you, right? Pero si hablas español y entiendes muy bien el español, cuando oyes el acento de Javier Bardem, when you hear this guy, for me, when Javier Bardem speaks, all I hear is ole, right? Because he's such a Spaniard, right? So it completely takes me out of the movie every time Stilgar talks because I just hear like a matador, right? It's like, what? And it's like, try to imagine, I don't know, if one of the characters spoke with like a New York, Brooklyn accent, right? You're like, it would take you out of the story. Javier Bardem does that to me in this movie. Every time he talks, I'm like, why is there a Spaniard in this movie? And I realized that for people who don't speak Spanish, it doesn't like you can't hear any kind of difference in accents because they're speaking English, right? It's all the same accent to you. But for me, like I know this guy's a Spaniard. He sounds like a Spaniard. Like it just takes me out of the movie. So I can't even adjust now. As far as the characterizations go, I think they do. I mean, Javier Bardem's a fantastic actor. If it wasn't for the accent, I'd say he did a really good job. Um, and it's not his fault. Like they obviously told him, just no, just keep your accent. Like why change it? Like it's sci-fi. But since he's only at the end of this movie, he has like one scene earlier. It's hard to make a judgment, but I'm sure with the second part of Dune, Javier Bardem's a fantastic actor, so I think it's probably going to go to Javier Bardem. But I like the old Stilgar too. So here it's a little closer, but it shows some of the goofy things, decisions that they made in this movie. Um, Here we really get into problems, right? Dr. Yui. So Dr. Yui in the book, there's a whole backstory. Really, Dr. Yui is the catalyst for everything that happens, right? He's the one who betrays the Atreides, and there's a reason he does it, right? And there's a backstory to him. Uh, None of this is portrayed in the new movie. It's very sort of, and Yui is not a huge character in the first story, but you do get a sense of who he is, why he is, that he is kind of tortured on what he's doing. You don't get any of that in the new one. And what makes it really disgusting is that this guy, Chang Chen, if you look him up, and I recognized him because I watch a lot of random Asian movies, and I was like, I've seen that guy. He's in buttloads of movies, right? He is a fantastic actor. I think he's from Taiwan, but he's in tons of movies and he's great, right? He literally has like one or two scenes. Like this is the quintessential tokenism, right? Just like, oh, we want to appeal to the Chinese demographic, throw Chang Chen in there, and then not give him any lines. Like he's probably one of the top two or three best actors in this movie, but they don't give him anything. He literally has like one, but like there's really when he attacks Duke Leto, that's really the only scene he has, right? He does appear and he does say a couple other things. He dies a little bit later and he has one scene. Like he's literally in this movie for less than a minute. And he's a fantastic actor. Like this is a complete waste. And you start to ask, well, what the fuck is going on in this movie? Like who is actually in this movie? Because it's a long movie and it's only the first half. And somehow Dr. Yui has like a quarter as much screen time as he did in the first one. When this is, it is an important character. It's not a character that has a lot of, we'll say screen time, even in the book, whenever you go book time, right? But he does have some time. You do need to understand Dr. Yui because he is the catalyst for the whole story. And he's just not in this movie, in the new movie. So here, it's like, again, Chang Chen is tremendous actor. And it's just not in here. So definitely, so you have to give it to the old one, just because he's not there. Piter, the Harkonnen mentat. Most people, if I showed you the picture of Piter, I had to look it up because I couldn't even remember after watching the movie 3 times now. That's right. What was Piter? I couldn't even remember what Piter DeVries was because he's not in the movie. He literally has one scene, or he just stands there most time, like not there. And this is just a stand-in for a lot of the characters, right? Yeah, I'm not going to talk about every single character, but like these are the ones that annoyed me, right? Piter DeVries, the guy who comes up with the whole plan of what to do, or not all the plan, but important character, just not there at all. And what ends up happening is that even in the old Dune, he has a personality. He's got that great scene in the transport on planet Giedi Prime, where he's like, the thoughts acquire speed, the lips acquire stains, the stains become a warning. It is by will alone I set my mind in motion. And just like those little things, he's there, right? He's got a personality. In the new one, he's just not there at all. They gave him nothing. He's not even a character. Like there's not even enough there to even say he's in the movie hardly, right? It's ridiculous. Now, Chani, kind of what's hilarious, like here, so in the old movie, Chani doesn't have a lot of scenes. You have to watch the extended cut for her to really be in the movie, right? Sean Young's job is basically like just sit there and be hot, right? And she does that well. So she really doesn't have much of a role. Like she has some role in the extended cut, but if you go back and watch the original movie, she's really not in it. And she is important in the books, right? But for whatever reason, In the old movie, they just like, we ain't got time for you, Chani. Now, in the new movie, she just shows up at the end, right? And so the idea is that she's going to be more important in the second half, right? Uh, so it's kind of hard to make a call because even in the new version where she's only in the second half, that's almost as much screen time as Chani had in the original movie. So without knowing how things are going to turn out, I'm just going to go ahead and say that the new Chani is going to be much more important than the old Chani. Right? This is certainly a weakness of the old movie. Um, I don't really know much about Zendaya, um, but I'm sure she's going to do fine. I'm sure she's going to hit it out of the park, right? Comparatively. Um, and this is where we get to what really decides this movie. Because up until this point, I really like the special effects. So I love the ornithopters. I liked a lot of the scenic things were great. Um, but what gets me is the following two characters, and this is always going to be the deal for me when it comes to Dune, right? First is the Baron Harkonnen, right? Now, the first movie does not do a good job in terms of being accurate to what the Baron Harkonnen is like, right? Um, the first movie turns him into a sort of cartoonish villain. I don't know, this sort of weirdo, right? The thing about it, though, is that while it is not a particularly accurate portrayal of the Baron Harkonnen, the original movie does create a villain with a lot of flavor and a lot of personality, right? So that he comes across as a sort of concrete character. I don't even know who Kenneth McMillan is. I had to look it up, but he did a good job, right? The thing is, he becomes a memorable character because of his scenes, because of his personality. Like it, for whatever, as cartoonish and goofy as it is, it works, right? It imprints on you. The new Baron Harkonnen tried to focus more on the sort of sense of menace that the Baron, and this is like the thing about about Baron Harkonnen in the books is that he has this sense of menace about him, right? He's this extremely, like, he comes across as the smartest person in the books, right? And there's a sense of intimidation that he's always going to outwit you over, like, you can't beat him, right? He's like a chess player. You know, his nephew Fade is constantly trying to kill him, and he's always a step ahead of him, right? And you very much get this sense that he's an indomitable figure. And I think they tried to go for that in the new movie, but it ended up coming across to me as a very, you don't have that sense of dread anymore. And he's in so few scenes again that he doesn't come across as anything other than this sort of weird Uncle Fester looking guy, right? And this is a great actor portraying him. But like, he didn't have enough scenes, and he just kind of like creepy and quiet, and once again you don't get that sense of dread and menace from him. But now you don't even get anything from him, right? He's just some creepy dude, right? And it's like you're not even there. And so it ends up being that, as sort of goofy as the first Baron Harkonnen was, he's at least in the movie. Like, you have some sense of who the bad guy is, and you want to see him brought down. And in the new movie, you just don't care because he's just not in the movie hardly, right? And he has no personality. They just made him into this sort of kind of like, what? And so he's just uninteresting. The Baron Harkonnen is just like, they have one sort of good kind of, one or two kind of creepy scenes where he's in the black goo for some reason, and then another where he's kind of floating up looking like creepy Uncle Fester, but like visually, like, the character is not a visual character really, right? It's very much like how you portray Baron Harkonnen matters, because he is like the villain, right? And he's a shit villain in the new movie. He's just not there. And lastly, I want to talk about the Lady Jessica, because this is the one that pissed me off the most, right? So Lady Jessica in the story, she's a Bene Gesserit, but she's not just a Bene Gesserit. Like she is a badass Bene Gesserit, right? She like amongst other Bene Gesserit, she is a badass, right? And you very much get the impression, like throughout the book, that she could kill everybody there if she wanted to. Like, don't piss her off. Thufir Hawat basically is terrified of her, thinks she's the one who betrayed them all. But everybody's scared of Lady Jessica, right? She has a severe sort of an intense intimidation factor in the books, right? Because of who and what she is. And this, I think, is portrayed fairly well in the first movie, that she's not just Duke Leto's concubine, right? She is a badass in her own right. And I mean, it's very clear in the books that she is a badass, right? It's clear in the first movie that she's a badass. If you go back and watch the second movie, I think Lady Jessica has sort of 5 or 6 major scenes, and she's crying in like 5 of them. Like and this is nothing against this actress, but how they wrote this character, I don't like, she has no sense of intimidation. And the fact that she literally just shows up to cry about stuff. Go back and watch it. I'd say 80% of her scenes, she's crying in them. And you're like, what the hell is this? This is not Lady Jessica at all. Like, this is the character that really bothered me the most about the new movie, was like, what the hell is this? Like, she's not intimidating at all. They just turned her in like this sort of just weepy, pathetic character, like just disgusting. Like, and for a film that, tries to be sort of diverse or sort of breaking a mold or something, like what a terrible way to portray the most important female character in the book. Like, it's like, what the hell is this? Like, I couldn't believe it. I'm just like, this Jessica sucks. And it's not the actress's fault. Like, they literally wrote this just terribly. Even the presentation, like she doesn't come off as regal. She doesn't come off as intimidating. She's just bleh. And literally, like, go back and watch it. She's crying in every damn scene. It's like, it was disgusting. It just annoyed me to no end. Like, I really like this character in the books. In the first movie, she's a very cool character. Nothing, nothing. Just terrible, 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 terrible. Like, overwhelmingly, the first Dune takes the cake on this one, or wins on this one. Um, and so my final analysis is that despite the fact that the first Dune was not as sort of accurate to the story as the new one, it's still a better movie with better characters, right? And for some reason, we've just forgotten. Like, this movie has a lot. I had to look up the director, because I'm not a giant movie buff. Like, I don't know who all the directors and actors are and what they've been in, but the guy who directs this movie, I was like, this movie is slow and weird, right? And when I watched it, I was like, this reminds me of that new Blade Runner movie, which was terrible. And it's the same director. I was like, okay, that makes sense, right? It's just slow and weird, and there's this, like, I don't know who watches this crap, and I know a lot of people like this new movie, but like, this stuff sucks. Like, it's way too, like, I don't understand how you can make a 2.5 hour movie and not have the characters in it. Like, you go back and you watch it, like, there's a lot of great scenery, and it's just too much of that, right? It's fantastic. You can make these great shots, but stories need characters, and a lot of these characters just aren't in the movie. And it's like, what is this? And while, yeah, the special effects are fantastic for the new movie, they're fantastic, right? They do just a wonderful job. Uh, but at the end of the day, like, I don't care about any of these people, and like, I'm not into the movie. And like, even my wife, right? And she's Vietnamese. Like, we watched the 1984 when she really liked it, and then I, like, a couple months later, when we finally watched this one, I was like, this is a remake, and she's like, this is terrible. And I was like, I know. I mean, actually, the first time I was like, well, no, this is pretty cool. And it wasn't until like the second or third time I watched it where I was like, what? Like, nobody's in this movie. Like what? And I'm like, what did I just watch? Like 3 hours of what? Of like still shots and beautiful scenery and cool effects, and then you're like, but there's no characters in this movie. It's just a flavorless movie. It's not flavorless, but it could have done a lot better. It's lacking in sort of personality. It's just this guy's movies. Like it's kind of the same thing with that old Blade Runner. It's like what the heck? Like there's like 20 minutes of story in this movie, and somehow it's a 2.5 hour movie. It's ridiculous. So they just suck at me. And what's funny is that I don't know who did, did this movie and did Blade Runner. I'll probably look it up, but I don't care. Um, it's like this guy just remakes old movies to make them slow and stupid, right? They're just bad. I don't, that's why I don't like watching. So I don't even watch stuff anymore. I just watch Asian films and anime now. So everything they make now is terrible. Like I could bitch for days, but it's like this. I don't know. So that's my final verdict is that while the new movie has a lot of interesting, the soundtrack. Let me just bitch about one more. The soundtrack to the new movie. I think I'm the only one that cares about this one, but for me, it was just weird. Like it didn't even fit the scenes. Sometimes it's just like it's just like a completely random sounds showing while like a battle's going on, and it's like it doesn't have that sort of epic feel of any. Like it just didn't fit. It just like every time I hear it, I'm just like this movie's taking me out of this music is taking me out of the movie. Like the score seems to not fit what's going on the screen. It's just sort of weird and esoteric. And anyways, I just wanted to get my last bitch in about that. So I've been meaning to make this for a while, so I just wanted to nerd rant about Dune. But yeah, the 1984 one with all its flaws, and it is a very flawed, kind of goofy movie, but it does a lot of things really well. Like even the opening scene, in the 1984 movie, right, where you get Princess Irulan, she does her little monologue, and then you see the Emperor, who's not even in the new movie, right? There is no Emperor. I don't even know if he's going to be in it. If they're just going to ignore the Emperor, but um, that scene with the navigator, right? And they mention Ix, right, which was cool, but there's nothing like that in the book, like that totally mutated navigator and thing. But it instantly grips you in the movie. You're like, this is interesting, right? What's going on, right? And they grip you with the sort of backstory. And in this sense, the old movie was very well done. And the people who tend not to like it are the people who were really, really big fans of the book, right? And because it does sort of stray, like I said, Paul Atreides is like 30 years old in the old movie. You're like, okay. But those things notwithstanding, the characters are good, right? The actors are good, and then the plot, the way it's presented, is good. It keeps you engaged, right? From the very outset, you're engaged. Like, what is this weird thing in a tank, right? It's the navigator. Like, if they could have redone that old movie, just yeah. Well, anyways, so yeah, I still like the old 1984 Dune better than the new one. The new one is just forgettable. It's just like so many movies that they make now are just instantly forgettable. Like nobody's gonna. Well, I don't want to say nobody, but I don't think that it's gonna get another remake because of the new Dune, right? In 20 years when we decide we're out of ideas again, or if we're just making Dune 7, who knows? But that's my take on Dune. I had to make my nerd rant. Thank you.